Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. Today I want to show a couple of trees and how they're doing right now. It is the start of spring and I simply want to show you how they are faring. All of them are indoor bonsai, but as you probably know yourself, if you have trees that you keep indoor full time, you still see when spring is around the corner. And the first tree I want to start with is this ficus ginseng right here, where you can definitely see a lot of new growth starting to happen at the moment. It started already a couple of days before the temperatures really picked up, so it's always nice to see how simply the stronger light source again, with of course the sunlight simply getting stronger, does have a very visible effect on this tree right away, and all the trees that really do benefit from more sunlight, of course, then again. As they are indoor trees, of course, they do have quite stable environments nevertheless, but that is probably the one factor that really affects them the most, is the change in daylight. And that is something we can see right here. In addition to simply getting more light, what I also did with this tree is I removed one of the side branches here. You can still see the wound that's starting to callus over right here. And of course, that also always has an effect on the tree. If we take out part of the tree, and it was quite a thick branch that we took out here, the energy the tree before put also into this branch is getting relocated also in the rest of the tree where foliage is growing. That also helps then with a lot of new growth appearing on very different spots of this tree. Also a lot of back budding going on then, and that is definitely something we can see here. And what is the best benefit out of this is a lot of ramification going on right now. So you can, for example, see here a lot of different branches where they start to branch out now. So they really develop those tertiary branches, because we have the primary branch, the secondary branches, and not tertiary branches starting to appear very nicely on this tree, which of course in the end will benefit the density, the overall look of this tree, and simply making it, of course, then appear older and more fitting to, of course, bonsai then. In general, a very healthy tree. Sometimes when the growth comes in on this ficus specifically, it looks a bit wobbly and wonky. So I'm sometimes thinking, is there pests that might affect this tree, or some deficiency? But as I have spotted now, as the leaves start to grow, continue to grow, they normally then get a normal shape again. So it seems just to be the growth pattern of this ficus microcarpa in specific. But in general, probably the tree that I can show you today, which has the most growth on right now, that benefits the most from spring. But let me also show you two other trees that definitely don't need to hold back when it comes to their growth right now. So here we have another tree. It is a Ficus benjamina that I'm trying to train as a clump style bonsai right now. I bought this basically trying to separate those and fuse them together. But while I repotted this tree, I did realize that they already started to fuse very mature at the root base. So there was no way of separating them any longer. And I thought, why not incorporate this into a potential future design for this tree and create a clump style bonsai out of it. So right now there is still a lot of branches in here. We might reduce this in the future still a little bit. You can see we have some wire on here. I must say, when I did repot this tree, it did go through a phase where it shed a lot of the leaves that were on it. So it didn't really take that nicely to the repotting that we did. Of course, we did work a lot on this tree. We also worked a lot on the roots. So it might have been a little bit too much for this tree, but now with spring, I can see how well it is bouncing back. You can probably spot right away all this growth happening here, also especially from lower parts here on those branches. A lot of new greenery happening here, but also on the tips we can see a lot of new growth. So overall, a very healthy tree that is simply now again putting the energy that it has into producing new leaves. I think for a time it went a little bit dormant, also focusing more probably underneath here on the roots and simply setting into its new pot. Also a lot of root growth probably has happened since then. And now, since it seems more established again, it is definitely focusing more again on leaves and branches, and that's very good to see, because of course right now it's still a bit messy, this tree. We just repotted it as is basically from its old pot. Only took out some of the stems that were in here. But to continue to work on this tree, we do need more dense foliage, more growth. And I think it is on a good way here, because right now here there is still a lot of things we need to work in detail on. We'll do this in another video definitely in the future, where we take out some of the old, maybe even die back branches, and continue working on the shape of this tree to really make it look like a nice fitting clump style bonsai. But I think right now it is on a good way with all this new growth, which also will help us, of course, with taper, making these branches stronger and thicker still. And it will probably still increase in height as we have also new tips forming here at the top of the branches. We will then, of course, bring it back over time again. So right now we'll let it grow a little bit more freely. Then we prune it back, making it hopefully then more dense here in this area. Probably prune also back all the suckers that start to appear right now here from where we cut back all the branches, and then definitely I think it will take shape in the future. But that is, as I said, something for a different video in the future. So here we have the third tree, and that definitely is a special case. You probably spot right away. There is not much old growth on this tree. It basically lost most of its foliage over the last couple of months after I repotted it, and then a couple of weeks afterwards pruned many of those branches back, and it did lose basically all leaves at that point, and I'm not quite sure, it somehow went into a shock somewhat, and I really thought almost this could be the end of this tree, but it seems to bounce back now with spring. And you can see so much new growth starting to appear here. And even here on this branch, for example, that has died back, you can see a new leaf appearing up here. You can see ramifications starting to happen here. So this is definitely a tree that is bouncing back. There is still vigor in this tree. But for a second, I really thought this might not work out, that this tree simply didn't take well to the repotting or to the pruning respectively afterwards. But now I do have confidence again that this will work out. What I'm also gonna do is treat this for pests, just to be sure that this was not one of the reasons that this tree did not fare that well, because of course coming out of cold season, especially spider mites, could be something that does affect a tree like this. So I will treat this simply with a diluted soap solution. Normally that takes care of spider mites very well in my collection. And then, of course, in the future, once we let most of this growth now really grow freely, we again have to decide on which branches we want to keep, because especially here, you can see all of this growth is basically coming from the same growth point. Sooner or later, we again have to decide which branch we keep and which branches we will take out here. Probably this one here, we will see how it develops now with the ramification. We either shorten or also take out. This one here seems to work quite well in the future also here in the design. But yeah, for now, definitely, hopefully this will continue to improve again. As I said, we'll treat it for pests just in case. And of course, I will continue to take care of it, and then we will see in the future how this turns out. But in general, I do enjoy the idea for this tree with this little rock next to it. It somewhat leaning on here. I even enjoy the roots that are normally, I'm not that much of a fan on Ficus macrocarpa. They really do have to fit for the overall design to in my opinion, yeah, make sense. And I think in this case, they do make sense with this tree just leaning on this rock. I think it's just a composition in itself that could be interesting in the future. So I'm happy that this tree seems to be bouncing back. It's not a lost cause yet, and that definitely makes me happy that for this growth season, it's more focusing on regaining its health, making sure it stabilizes, and then maybe we do some pruning, as I said, with the branches in here. But I think for the summer, this is all we can do on this tree. Simply making sure it establishes itself a bit more in this pot. But again, also on this tree, of course, I will keep you updated. I hope you enjoyed this little look on 3 separate trees that I have in my collection and how spring is affecting them. And of course, the main effect is that there's a lot of new growth. But with this growth, of course, also normally comes simply an increase in health again. They simply become active. You can see how the energy is used again in this tree to produce growth, and that is always something nice to see, I think, in spring. So hopefully that gave you an idea of those 3 trees and how they're doing right now. If you have any questions, of course, feel free to leave them in the comments, and if you have any comments or ideas on those trees, of course, also leave them in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to leave a like, and if you enjoy this channel, feel free to subscribe. And hopefully I will see you in the next video then. Until then, take care.